When you think about getting rich from coding, what comes to mind? Building the next startup idea, running a freelance business, creating a viral course. Now, these are all great ways one could possibly get rich from coding. However, the probability that any random developer makes millions of dollars in their lifetime from one of these endeavors is slim. And I'm not saying that to discourage you from trying. If you have the vision and the work ethic to run your own business, you absolutely should. That's what I'm doing with this YouTube channel right here. Matter of fact, if you're currently a developer and you have the desire to start a freelancing business, build a startup, or try to create a course, I think that you certainly should, because worst case scenario, if it doesn't work out, you still have your very promising developer career to fall back on. But I know the majority of developers would rather focus on improving their craft rather than getting involved with the many aspects of attempting to run a business. So if it's not running a business, what are your other options for getting rich from programming? Getting a job in big tech, getting a fat total compensation package. Yes, this is one way you could get rich from programming. We know big tech pays astronomical amounts of money. I mean, senior engineers alone at Google make $342K a year. And if you make $342,000 every year, that puts you in the top 2% of the United States, and by all means, you're rich. But this video isn't even for the people that want to get a job at big tech. It's pretty clear that you can make tons of money from coding if you work at a FANG company, but it will require you to be a top-level engineer, grind hundreds upon hundreds of hours of elite code, and master the coding interview. The thing is, most software developers, something like 99%, won't ever work at a big tech company, and I think it's important that this video appeals to the majority. The person who wasn't a programming prodigy at 8 years old, the person who struggled with math in college or high school, the person who's in their late 20s or 30s and they want to transition into tech because they want to work a more fulfilling career. The average programmer, if you will. So how can the average programmer get rich with coding? And to be honest, it's quite boring. It really just boils down to you working in the industry, increasing your year-over-year earnings, not falling victim to lifestyle creep, and then investing as much as you can. And when I say average, I'm talking dead set Indeed.com software engineer salary. $108,000 plus a $5,000 bonus. Now, even if this figure seems high to you or unattainable, don't worry, because we're going to talk about how you can quickly get to that level. So here are 3 ways that you can get rich off the average programmer's salary and increase your year-over-year earnings. Number 1, and I'm certainly no finance channel, but that would be to invest the majority of your income. First off, I just want to say that I used to think investing was super complicated until I picked up the books The Simple Path to Wealth and A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And after reading these books, especially The Simple Path to Wealth, it made me realize how simple and easy investing actually is. And when I say investing, I really just mean buying appreciating assets. So this could be real estate, stocks, etc. I'll be sticking with stocks in this video because that is the path that I'm currently going down, and it's easier for you to see the numbers. So if you were making the average programmer salary of $113,000 a year, you would be bringing in approximately $3,250 twice a month. If you were to take your first paycheck every month and put it towards bills, expenses, food, living, etc., which mind you at $3,250 a month, you can live a pretty comfortable life. This is about what I spend a month living in the 3rd biggest city in the United States. Anyways, if you were to take that first paycheck and then invest the second paycheck entirely into the S&P 500 or a total stock market index fund at a modest 8% return for 10 years, you'd be looking at nearly $600,000. And at 15 years, you'd be sitting at 1.1 million. Now, yes, 10 years is a considerable amount of time, but playing the long game is really your only closest guarantee to building wealth. And I know some people will argue that accounting for taxes and inflation, $600K after 10 years wouldn't be that much money. But even accounting for that, imagine if you had $600K in liquid assets, you invested from 25 to 35, that would be able to pay for your expenses. Granted, you don't live too lavishly for at least 10 years. Do you know how much peace of mind you would have knowing that if you lost your job or God forbid something bad happened, you would have literally a whole decade to figure it out. 600K in liquid assets alone at 35 would put you in the top 10% of the United States in net worth. And this figure isn't even accounting for your year-over-year salary increases and promotions, extra money that you could be putting towards investments, which segues perfectly into the next thing that I want to talk about. Number 2, promotions and raises. Now, the goal with each promotion and raise is to not fall victim to lifestyle creep, which I know is difficult, and it's something that I've fallen victim to in the past. We'll talk about that in a moment. But when you start making more money, rather than buying a bigger house or a faster car, take that extra cash and invest it. Let's say you find a new job and you go from that average software engineer salary of $113K and you get a raise up to $140,000 a year, which, mind you, isn't atypical in tech. If you were to keep your expenses the same at $3,250 a month and then invest the rest of that money, it would be about $4,670 for 10 years. You would go from $600K to $830,000. Now, I do want to say that your first entry-level job will probably not even get you close to $100,000 a year. My first full-time job paid me $55,000, but if you play your cards right, you can quickly get to that six-figure number within about 3 years. The average tenure at a software job is around 2 years, I believe. And the reason for that is because within your first 3 years as a software engineer, your skills go up exponentially, meaning your value also goes up exponentially. And because companies typically don't give 20 to 30% raises to match the market value of your skill level, people will often job hop until they find a salary that they're comfortable with. As I said, my first job paid me $55K a year. I was lucky and I got promoted within 2 years and I got a nice raise to $72K a year. I stayed at that company for about 6 more months until I moved cities and I got my first $100K a year job offer. So all in all, it took me about 2.5 years from the time of getting my first full-time gig to getting that average software engineer salary. Now, I do encourage you to try to always maximize your income and get paid for your skill level, but I think the most important thing to look for as a developer is not the salary itself, but if you're being challenged enough and if you're constantly growing your skills. For example, let's take 2 software development jobs, one that would pay you $100K a year and another that would pay you $130K a year. And at the $100K a year job, you'd be working in a very popular tech stack. You'd be working with a handful of senior engineers who are able to mentor you, and you're pushing code to millions of users every week. You're constantly challenged, you're constantly learning, and you're constantly growing. But at the $130K a year job, you'd be the only dev on the team, you'd be working in an obsolete language, and you would be supporting legacy software. Which job would you rather work at? To me, the $100K a year job is a no-brainer because within 1 to 2 years of working in an environment like that, your skill level will be at the point where you'll be able to find a job where you're making much more than the $130K a year guy. You always have to think about the long-term game and advancing as a software engineer when it comes to your career. A working environment where you're growing will always triumph over the raw salary on paper. Now, when you're at the point where you're making that average software engineer salary, let's talk about the one thing that a lot of people fall victim to once they start making 6 figures, and one thing that certainly got the best of me when I started making more money, and that is my third and final point: lifestyle creep. Like I said, I landed my first full-time software development job making $55K a year at 21. Now, at this point, I'd started renting an apartment for $800 a month. I was driving the car that I had from high school, which was paid off. And all in all, even at $55,000 a year, I was saving a shit ton of money. But the thing is, in my 21-year-old brain, I thought I was rich. So I justified eating Chipotle every day and going to nice sit-down restaurants weekly. I even totaled my car, and rather than getting something modest, I wanted to flex, and I got a car that I was paying $500 a month for. And then to make matters worse, when I got my raise from $55K a year to $72K a year, you know what I did? I started renting a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,500 a month, just $700 more than what I was used to paying. I was making more money than I had ever had, but I was effectively broke because I spent every dime that I made. I fell victim to lifestyle creep. I was so used to all the adults around me growing up spending everything that they made. When they got a raise, they would buy a faster car. When they got a bonus, they would spend that on a vacation. I was so used to that model that I thought that it was normal to just spend everything that I made. And the thing is, in America, that's how most people live. And the shittiest part about lifestyle creep is that upgrading your life is easy, but downgrading, man, that hurts. I sort of started to realize I was broke because after 2 years of working at my software job, I looked at my bank account and I had like nothing in there. Anyways, I eventually stumbled across some financial advice on YouTube and I realized that I was going down a pretty bad path financially speaking. So naturally I decided that I needed to reel it in and that I needed a reset. I decided that I was going to find a higher paying job, so I started studying for coding interviews. I sold my car in favor of public transportation, left my hometown to move to Chicago, found a new job, and then I came up with a plan. And that plan was to pay off all my student loan debt and save at least 50% of my income every month. And for the past 3 years, I've been sticking to that plan. Now, I still enjoy myself. I go on vacations here and there. Sometimes I spend way too much on dinner, but I'm much more conscious of the amount of money that I'm spending, especially if I don't think the thing that I'm going to spend money on will add value to my life. Because the reality is, how many fancy dinners, how many vacations, how many 4 to 5 star hotels do you have to stay in before you realize that that shit gets old quick? I'll leave you with this quote I found online from some random Redditor. Live as if you're going to get hit by a bus tomorrow, but plan as if you're gonna live until you're 80. Find that number where you can still live a fulfilling life, which I bet you if you really dig deep, it's much lower than you would expect. $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month, whatever, and then invest the rest. And once you get those raises and promotions, don't inflate your life at all, or at least very minimally, and take that extra money and put it towards assets. Anyways, I hope this video gave you some perspective on how you can build wealth on the average programmer's salary. I wish I would have learned about this earlier on in my career, but it is what it is, and I'm happy to be sharing it with you guys. If you like what I'm doing over here on my channel, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.